an active and engaged conversation. And that's why we're all here, is to chat with each other. So Heidi,
Okay,
you're
so
up.
hello everyone. Welcome to the summit, which is what I would normally say if we were together. I'm really excited. I think we're really fortunate to have Arlie with us tonight. Arlie has been, up until very recently, the owner of a bike shop in Denver, Colorado that specialized in e-bikes and cargo bikes. She is moving back to the East Coast, I'm happy to say, to be closer to family. And it's going to be great to welcome her into the Triangle area. If you don't know Arlie and if you don't follow her on social media, I highly recommend you do. I'll put the links in the chat box. She has, I think her Twitter handle is @bikeshopgirl.com. She also has a YouTube channel where she reviews a lot of products and gives very nice detailed reviews of them. So check that out. And just remember, before I turn this over to Arlie, I think she has an announcement about maybe a new position she's got coming up in the future. If you have questions for Arlie, put them in the chat box. We'll forward them to her. If you want to ask it out loud, just put down that you want to ask it out loud and we'll unmute you. If you're not talking, mute yourself so that we don't get a lot of background noise. And so Arlie, I'm going to let you start. Maybe give us a little background about how you got into the bike business and about how you decided to open a shop for cargo bikes and e-bikes specifically, and what is coming up in your future.
Thanks, Heidi. I'm so excited to be here. I fortunately know many of you because I lived in Charlotte, North Carolina for about 9 years. I think when Terry decided to ride his bike across the country, I was his mechanic, and Claudia and Nix I worked with in the bike industry. So it's so fun to see everyone here. And for me, I'm excited because I'm moving back to North Carolina in the spring, and that is something not only am I looking forward to, but I've been looking forward to for 8 years. I love Denver, but there's nothing like North Carolina. So my goal here today is to really talk about e-bikes, cargo bikes. But by trade, I'm a mechanic and work in the bike industry. So if you have questions, please just ask them in the chat and I'll do my best to answer them. I'm moving back in the spring, but I'm fortunate enough, we're still in Denver, Colorado right now, and soon I'll be officially working for Turn Bicycles as a product marketing manager here in the North American region, but also on their product development team. So it's really fun for me because I can take my years of experience of trying to help get people on bikes, consumer-wise, like working just with daily people, and taking it back to a brand. Typically, there's a disconnect there. So that's really exciting for me. And going back to my bike shop, so the last 3 years, I opened a bike shop for me, which was, I was a mom that wanted to transport my kids around. So I got into cargo bikes. And then I was truly inspired by the e-bike movement and realizing biking doesn't have to be hard, and it can be inclusive in the space of I can ride with anyone and not be intimidated, not be worried about, the terrain or sweaty or what do I need to wear. And that's really where I hope to talk today, is just about how e-bikes can really help get more people on bikes, and in an inclusive way, because there's trikes, there's all sorts of different types of e-bikes that can help people.
Thank you. I don't know if we have any questions yet. If we do, Mary Jo, jump in. I have a couple that I could start with. I actually, full disclosure, I have an e-bike. I love it. I had a cargo bike. I loved it. I need to figure out a way to make an electric cargo bike. But maybe, people who are interested in making the switch, they always say, there's so many choices out there. Where do I start? Can you give somebody an idea of where to start? Where's a good place to get information? I know you've got some great information on your website about the different kinds, but.
You know, I'm going to be the typical bike shop owner and say, visit your local bike shop. But, 3-4 years ago, e-bikes were very rare to find. North Carolina actually has a very large e-bike dealer in the middle of it, but I would say almost any major Trek and Specialized dealer are now very educated in the space. While like 3-4 years ago, it was very rare to find somebody that had good e-bikes on the floor and good mechanics that knew what they were talking about. So I would say start with a local bike shop. If you're intimidated by that, that's what the internet's for. Um, you know, but in general, I would say the best thing you can do is test ride one. And is it Raleigh that has the electric bike share? No, no electric bike
is.
share in Raleigh. Okay.
It
So
is.
I would say that's not going to be to the caliber of bike that you would purchase, but it's a very low entry way to try an e-bike is to go rent one for an hour and go on a bike tour around the neighborhoods. Or if you have a local bike shop, Liberty would be a great example. Like, see if you can test ride several bikes, take it up the biggest hill you can find, and your life will be forever changed.
And I think one of the people on here, our board member Richie, who's in Asheville, rents electric bikes, I think by the hour in Asheville, which is a great place to try out an e-bike.
Yeah, I one of the things that I always start talking about when I talk about e-bikes is it can be as hard or easy as you want it to be. And Heidi, I know you're very experienced in the e-bike world, but what I experience as a shop owner is if the more people I can get just to try them, the more they realize whatever they thought about e-bikes is not true. Where it's too fast, it's not responsible. Maybe, they feel like it's too heavy or it's going to be hard to ride. And it really just feels like you ate your Wheaties today.
Well, and there are three classes of e-bikes, right? So maybe you could talk about how those affect your decisions.
For sure. So we're fortunate in this country, we have People for Bikes, and People for Bikes fought really hard to help classify different types of bikes so that they can have different laws around them. So the most popular one is going to be considered a class 1 in most states. And what that means is you have to pedal and the bike just assists you at different levels of assistance. So you can actually have the bike off. You're just going to be pedaling a bike from 40 to 80 pounds by yourself, or you can ask it to give you assistance. So when you pedal, it amplifies your pedaling to give the drivetrain and chain more power. So it just feels like you ate your Wheaties today. And then a class 1 only helps you up to 20 miles per hour. And then you're up to your own muscles and shifting if you want to pedal it faster than that. From there, I actually normally skip to class 3. So class 3 is the same idea, but you can take it up to 28 miles per hour. So it helps you pedal up to 28 miles per hour. And then class 2 is this gray area. So class 1, anyone can ride it. Most states you can ride it, almost all places. Check your local bike paths. And then class 3, a lot of times it's restricted off of bike paths. I will say that typically you're going to be governed by the local bike path speed limit. Here in Denver, it's 15. So they don't really care what you're riding as long as you're pedaling and it's under 15 miles per hour. But the 28 mile per hour is nice if you're trying to compete with traffic because you can keep up with traffic on normal city roads. And then class 2, that gray area, most bike shops don't sell class 2 unless it's their own type of bike, like Pedigo is a big one, because these require a throttle and you can actually not pedal the bike. And so most bike shops don't sell these because in some states they're considered mopeds. You have age restrictions, you have a lot of location restrictions. And so what I find is if somebody is thinking about an e-bike and they always love the idea of a throttle, I'll say, go try both. And then we'll have a conversation about your experience. It just depends what you're wanting. Are you wanting the most power and not to pedal much? Maybe you have a disability or a concern. Well, maybe you do need the throttle. but most people just want the assistance, and those are going to be more reliable and feel more like riding a bike instead of a moped.
Arlie, this is Mary Jo, and we have a question in the chat from John. He's considering choosing an e-bike for his 80-year-old father. Do you have a recommendation?
Depending where he lives and if he needs to transport it. So I can use my own experience. 77-year-old mother-in-law lives in Efland, and she started with a normal 2-wheel e-bike. And it just became too difficult to transport. They live off a gravel road. So she recently switched to a cat trike, 3-wheel trike with a Bosch e-bike motor. And she loves it, and it's more stable, and she just feels more secure. So if you don't have to transport the bike, you have a lot more options. If, say that he doesn't live somewhere that's fairly safe to bike, you might want to transport it, and then you want something that can go in the back of a car. There's a lot of really good, I would say, go to your local bike shop and see what they have. If they only have really performance-oriented ones, I'm happy to offline on this question. But I almost always, if you have 3 bikes to pick from, pick the dealer closest to you, because these bikes are very specialized. They are more expensive, and you want somebody that's certified working on them.
And John mentions that his dad is in Milwaukee, and he rides directly from home. So
perfect. John, I have a bike shop recommendation. I'll send it to you in a chat.
Very nice. I have another question. This one comes from Dale. He asks, how do you address speed differentiation, especially on trails?
So almost all e-bikes will tell you how fast you're going. It's actually built into the bike, which is nice because you don't have a computer or side, GPS or something that you need to turn on. In most places, you just get yelled at by the mom pushing the stroller if you're going too fast. In some places, like in Denver, we have a bike corridor that goes through downtown. They actually put, Parks and Rec has people out on the weekends giving tickets. So I don't know what it's like right now in North Carolina. I would say it depends how busy. I could see on the tobacco trail, like if it gets really busy on a Saturday. But the speed differential, does that answer your question, Dale?
You can unmute if you want to, Dale.
It does. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, I have the next question from Stephen. I'm going to just read it, and hopefully I won't hurt it at all. What are manufacturers and dealers doing to increase skills, such as education, for e-bike customers to improve their safety, given the higher speeds they will be traveling under a wide variety of traffic and surface conditions? And he goes on to say, I see some users getting themselves into trouble by riding faster into hazardous situations than their own power would normally allow.
This is actually a great example why I shy away from throttle bikes. They can get you up to, you can actually hack most of them and make them go 50 miles an hour. They're supposed to only take you to 20, but you can make them do things they shouldn't. And the throttle, the issue is you're not pedaling yourself up to that speed. So it can be that you're just like in a car slamming on the gas and now you're out of control. Locally here, we have Bicycle Colorado, which is our statewide, and they have funding to do adult education. It's not specific to e-bikes, but if somebody's new to biking, they often seek out these classes, and I would look to all the LCIs in this classroom to say, like, I think it's a great opportunity. I hope dealers are educating. I know of a lot of dealers here in Denver, San Fran, and Seattle, that they actually make it so they can ride with their customers that first ride, because the bikes are heavy. Often they start at 45 pounds up to, I have cargo bikes that start at 100 pounds without passengers, and they can physically carry 500 pounds. So with those, typically I'm always outside with my customers, walking them through, talking about saddle height, talking about all those things. So hopefully dealers will realize that they need to educate and look at it more like a true test ride experience instead of like, oh, you want to try this? Have fun. And, I would look at the LCIs here and say, what could we do in North Carolina to educate? And maybe it's another webinar or ride along, or I'm signing up for the ride along in Asheville.
Yeah, I just recently acquired an e-bike, and it's a real different ride from the traditional bike just because of the weight. There is a learning curve to it. All right, I have next question from Deborah, and she asked, do you have any tips about e-bikes on a group ride?
If it's a mixed group ride, I always ask the e-bike riders to be in the back for a couple of reasons. E-bikes allow you to change your assist level. So you can be putting the same amount of energy in, but on a Bosch bike, you have 4 different levels of assistance. So at Eco, I'm getting about 50% assistance, but in Turbo, depending on the bike, it could be 300% assistance. So I can be barely pedaling, going 15 miles per hour. And because of that, I can change my workout by simply changing my mode assist. So I almost always ask the e-bike rider, hey, and I try to build them up like, hey, you're on that really cool bike. Would you be willing to ride sweep with us? Instead of like, will you be the jackrabbit that rides off into the sunset? And typically they're like, oh yeah, of course, but you have one thing that I think is really fun about e-bikes is it allows different skills and different athletic abilities to ride together. And I like to talk about barrier removals, but it allows my mother-in-law on her e-trike to ride with my father-in-law who rides, 30 miles a day, 6 times a week together. And she can just change the assist level to ride with him. She could totally leave him, but she can change the assist level so she's still getting a workout in and she's riding with him instead of him waiting for her or her, just being discouraged.
Thank you so much. I do have a new question from Richie, and he asks, could you talk about retrofit kits like Bafang? I don't know if that's how you pronounce it.
You said it right. Yeah, okay, so great. There's been probably some of the original e-bike systems were all something that you strap to your bike. 6 years ago, the most popular thing was called a Bionics wheel. And you replaced your rear wheel with an electric assist. Same idea, where you pedal and through sensors, the wheel knows to give you more assistance. Bafang is one of the probably largest actual e-bike manufacturers in the world. They're typically added to a bike. There's only a few brands in the US that actually have them pre-built on the bike. And what I always tell to people, and I can link after we're done, where I've kind of given a side-by-side comparison of when you should do a DIY kit or when you should buy a purpose-built kit. Typically, I ask somebody, what kind of bike are you putting in one? E-bikes these days start at $1,200 to $2,000. A kit normally costs between $900 and $1,200 unless you're installing it yourself and really a DIY person. If you're a DIY person, you'll probably be fine with a Bafang or something. If you're like most bike riders where you barely remember to pump up your tires, you don't want to be dealing with the connectors. We kind of get into wild west of battery packs, warranty, fires, all these other things. But the other thing I talk to people is your bike capable of taking that much torque and energy between the brakes, the parts that are already on it? If it started off as a $400 hybrid, I probably wouldn't put another $1,200 of e-bike into it. I would just buy a dedicated e-bike with good brakes, good shifting, and a frame that's been tested to be able to take that much torque and energy.
Thanks so much. So I just want to remind everybody, if you do have a question, please just post it in the chat. I'm watching them closely. Since I don't have a new one, I've got my own. And it really is about one of the hurdles that I had to overcome before I entered into the e-bike was the life of the battery. I feared getting stuck out there. And do you have any tips on how to use your battery wisely when you're heading out so that it'll last you and get you home?
Yeah, in the bike world, we call it range anxiety. If you drive an electric car, you've experienced that too. So a couple of things, MJ, I would say, one, know if your battery, like your phone, your phone after a couple of years of use probably isn't getting a full charge, and you'll know, like I used to get a full day out of it and now I get 7 hours and I have to have a charger at work. So it's that same idea where probably the first 5 times you charge your battery, I tell people to reset their trip, not their like odometer of their bike, but their trip, so that you can get a sense of per charge, I'm getting this much range, and you'll know how you rode it during that time. And so for me, my personal cargo bike, I know I get about 30 miles per charge. And even though it has a battery indicator that tells me, you have 4 miles left, I know I probably have 12 because I can just give myself less assistance in that. But I would really recommend for the first few rides to test it. And if you're a geek like me, like document it, but at least have it in the back of your head, like, okay, on a full charge, right now my battery's getting, on a normal e-bike, by the way, I have a 100-pound bike that I carry 2 kids and a dog in. A normal e-bike, I'm getting anywhere from 60 to 120 miles. And so on those bikes, I have a good sense. And then probably in like 3-4 years, I'm just not getting a full charge. And that's when I start really wanting to track my battery, how much distance I'm getting between charges, because I know I'm not getting the full charge I did in the beginning. And the other thing, MJ, I would say is bring your charger with you. Especially the Bosch and Shimano chargers and batteries, you get 70% of your charge in an hour. So, stop for coffee, plug in, social distancing, and, you'll have more range. So you're not so nervous getting home or bike packing or whatever adventure you're going on.
So that brings to mind another question. I recently was reading an article about, and I saw this in the Netherlands, charging stations for e-bikes. And we're all talking about it now. If you're putting them in for cars, put them in for bikes. Do you know how that works with so many different kinds of e-bikes?
I can email out, there's one station type available in the US, and you buy a special plug that you carry with you to adapt into this charger station. So at home, I have Bosch chargers, but then on my bike, I would need this special Bosch charger that I bring with me to plug into these special stations. And the only way to plug in is you lock your bike. And when you do so, it unlocks this little locker. And that's what you're plugging into it. So it's not like a raw power source that somebody could just walk up and plug into.
Great.
Arlie,
Yeah.
I do have another question, and it's a pretty simple one. Hoping for a simple answer.
Okay. I see,
on why
Deborah.
e-bikes, why e-bikes are so heavy. Can you explain that to us?
Yeah, I would break it down into 3 parts, right? Like the most obvious is you have a motor that has to assist you. And either the motor is going to be built into the bike so you don't even notice it, or it's built into your wheel. And that adds sometimes 10 to 15 pounds, depending on the system. Then we have a battery, and the really high quality ones like Bosch, those batteries are 8 pounds. The more like affordable options, I've seen batteries weigh 20 pounds. And so you're talking, you've just strapped 30 pounds to your bike. And this is why I warn people, we call it a donor bike, but be wary of what your bike is if you're adding a DIY kit. I think, Terry, you added in the chat, Luna Cycles is a very popular place to get DIY e-bike kits. Just make sure the bike you start with is quality, because you're adding 30 pounds without even your own body. And that's 30 pounds of torquing weight. And so, and then, Deborah, the last piece I would say, these bikes are typically tested to a much higher standard. So the tubing and the parts that they're using may be equivalent to like a mountain bike versus like a lightweight road bike.
Thank you. So Arlie, you mentioned that e-bikes start between $1,200 and $2,000. Can you talk about the difference in the quality to consider between the lower and the upper end of the range?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite questions. I'm an interesting shop owner where I've been on both sides, and I don't want to discourage somebody from getting a bike, right? And there's many online, Rad Power is probably the most popular in the US, where they always have these sales and you can get an e-bike for $900. And what I would tell you is if that's all that your budget allows right now, I completely respect that. But just know if you decide to ride that bike reliably, it probably won't last. The parts are much cheaper. The batteries and the cells that they actually use in the batteries are not the best technology. And so if it's, for every other Saturday you go on a 10-mile bike ride, it's fine. But if it's becoming your daily commuter, here in Denver, a lot of people are trying to leave their car a little bit more often. I would make sure that somebody's available if you need help. And then just know that it's a first step and you might need to upgrade. But if it's the only way that you're willing to try an e-bike, because, quality e-bikes from a bike shop are more expensive, I respect that. And what I would just say is if it's under $1,800, it's probably sold direct to you unless it's on sale. And, a bike shop's not building that. And a bike shop probably won't work on it. And that's a whole nother disclaimer. So for me, for Rad Power, I don't work on them anymore. If you are really struggling because you have a flat or something like that, I might advise you. But I've seen enough of those batteries where somebody goes to plug in the battery and it sparks. And, especially if it's a really hot battery, I personally haven't seen a fire, but I know in my community alone, there has been 2 different fires due to cheap e-bike batteries. Like we're talking these huge lithium batteries, and just, they're trying to build things affordable, and so there's some e-bikes that I won't even let in my store, or if I need to work on them because you're like stranded, it's like, you're not leaving the store without your bike. I'm not keeping it here overnight.
Well, I have a question that came in regarding batteries, and it asks, how long should a battery last, and what is the replacement cost when it's time?
Oh, Heidi, I see you. So it depends on what type of system you have. So the ones we talked about, the direct to consumer, or what we consider, not going through a bike shop. So it'll probably be that Bafang or Lunacycles style battery. Those will range anywhere from $400 to $1,200, depending on the size. And then for like a Bosch powered battery, you're looking between $650 and $900, depending on the size of the battery.
Okay,
And
great.
how long, did you say how long they'll last?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I have a customer that rode a folding turn electric bike, like toured all over with it, and they had 35,000 miles on their battery. So some systems like Bosch, I can literally plug a computer into it and know its life history more than you probably want. And 35,000 miles, he just wasn't getting a full charge. He was getting half charge. For most people, it would have been fine, right? Like you just bring your charger to work, but he was touring, so he needed it to be reliable. And he also abused his battery. So the Bosch batteries, I can see the temperature range that it's seen in its life. And it had seen like 150 degrees or something like that. So he tested his battery into the extremes. The cheap batteries that I was talking about, I typically tell people budget for every 2 years, need a new battery. The Bosch batteries, as long as you're taking care of them and not leaving them out in the heat, they should last thousands and thousands of miles.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to throw in one of my own, since
You're the moderator. Go
Managing-
for it.
Well, it's about batteries, and it's very serious. What do you recommend for a daily maintenance or application? I ride my bike, I bring it back. It has 3/4 of the battery still on it. Should I leave it alone or should I charge it up fully? What do you recommend for maintaining a good quality battery so you don't have to replace it soon?
Yeah, right. The two or maybe three things I tell people. Number one, try to avoid those extreme temperatures. And because of that, I would say, in North Carolina, you really don't see extreme temperatures like we do in Denver. Like it'll be 5 degrees one day and the next day my garage heats up to 110. So in those instances, I'm going to bring it inside, right? Like the litmus test that I tell people is if you won't leave your kids in the garage, don't leave your battery in the garage. I abuse my batteries. So I do leave them in the cold. I'll never leave my battery if it's too hot because that's just super dangerous. But it just keeps everything happy. And then for charging, typically you have some sort of like bars or indicator of how charged it is. MJ, if you didn't need the full battery charge the next day, I would say it's fine. Try to charge it before it's 20% left. And if you do kill your battery, just charge it as soon as possible. Like don't kill it and then leave it sitting overnight, because what we look for is the lithium ion needs to swell and shrink. And if it shrinks and you didn't charge it, you might be SOL. And so, the other thing I tell people, not that we're traveling right now, but I do typically tell people, if you're going to travel for more than 2 weeks, don't store your battery fully charged or fully empty. We want to kind of have it between that like 60 and 30%. On a Bosch battery, there's 5 little lines and you just want it between the 1 and the 4.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of the car batteries. They don't want you to charge them all the way to the top for those vehicles. All right, so moving on. Now we have cargo bike questions. Torin asks, what criteria would you use to judge whether a city is a good one for a cargo bike shop?
Oh, Torin, I hope you didn't see me on Twitter. One of the cities I gave a really hard time. We really looked at moving our bike shop. We're very successful here, and I just really struggled finding a bubble. Like unless I just lived in Chapel Hill next to a bike path where people could test ride them all day long. So what I look for is the city truly investing in your infrastructure and dedicated infrastructure, not just painted lanes, mainly because a person that buys a cargo bike, ideally after the early adopter phase, will just be families or health and environmental focused people that just want to drive less. And they probably don't want to be on those busy roads without protected space. I don't ride on a lot of roads that I do by myself with my kids. And that's kind of what I look at. And I've spent so many hours on Google Maps, and poor Heidi, I've been like blowing her up because trying to figure out if you look at Google Maps, it will say like it's bike friendly or something. And then you look at the Google Maps and you're like, it has a shoulder and the speed limit is 45, which means probably people are going 55 to 60. I probably won't be biking there with my kids. And so, Torin, I think budget from the city to have dedicated space for cycling, and looking in cities that look at cycling as a true mode of transportation and not just like those people on the side that are making a lot of noise.
I'm going to move on with Stephen's question regarding cargo bikes. And he says, I worry I won't be able to fit one in my crowded garage. Do any of them collapse to become narrower? And he also asks, are any of them light enough to hang on the wall?
On the wall, I don't think so. And Stephen, maybe you can chime in. I think it depends what you're trying to carry. And I say that because, biased, of course, but Tern makes a lot of small, compact cargo bikes. Like they were one of the original super compact electric assist cargo bikes in the US. Europe has had them for years, but these are 20-inch wheels, and they're actually I think they're like 7 centimeters longer than a standard road bike, like a 56 centimeter road bike. And they all store on the rear. So what's nice about that is, like, say you don't have garage space because you have too many bikes, not cars, just too many bikes. You can always park it into the corner and pull it up on its rear. And then light enough to hang on the wall. What I would say is I've had more and more people purchasing kayak lifts for their cargo and electric bikes. This is actually a good way to work on cargo and electric bikes because there's not a lot of mass produced stands, like repair stands, that don't cost $2,000. So they install like a kayak lift in their garage and, like just has a pulley system.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking to carry as many groceries as possible, bigger, bulkier things that I can fit in my panniers, basically. So I like a lot of those wide containers that I see on a lot of the cargo bikes, wanting something like that, but not knowing how I'm going to fit it in my garage with my 10 other bikes and my woodworking shop.
Wow. That sounds like a good garage. So I would recommend the Turn HSD, and then there's a few others. There's this group of cargo bikes called Midtails, and they're not much longer than a normal bike, but they carry a lot more. And Stephen, the other thing I would say is look at a trailer. Burley makes the Travoy that can clip onto the back of your seat post or rack, and you can put crates on it. You can put your golf clubs on it. You can put all sorts of things on it. And then it unclips and you can actually take it into the grocery store with you or roll it into wherever you're going instead of having to unload your bike.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, that about sums up all the questions that were in the chat. Does anyone want to chime in and ask your question live? Just raise your hand.
I can ask a couple.
I'm really here just for Heidi. That's why she convinced me to join.
This was for me, but I thought other people might be interested. No, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the difference between the pedelec, which is the mid-drive motor that you talked about, and the front hub and the rear hub in terms of pluses and minuses for them. I know that a friend of mine had one with a rear hub motor, again, from a mail-in, which is another reason to use local. And it broke spokes almost immediately and they wouldn't fix it. So I understand that the wheel wasn't built correctly, but in terms of advantages for the the mid-drive versus the front and rear hub.
Yeah, so what Heidi's asking is there's different places to put a motor on an e-bike. And these days, the most popular ones that you'll see from like mass-produced bike shop brands have the motor in the middle of your bike where your pedals kind of attached to. And the advantages of that are your pedals attached to your cranks, so those arms that hang down, and that's what's attaching to your motor. So when you pedal, your torque from your legs directly go to the motor, and then the motor senses that and adds and amplifies before it starts driving the chain. And now that's where the power comes from. And there's really no lag because your legs are directly connecting to the motor. A hub-based system, so picture your wheels, in the middle of your wheels called a hub, and you can put a wheel with a motor on the front or back. The main advantages of those are they're more affordable and they potentially can give a lot more power. So I know folks that maybe they just can't do the pedal assist or the pedelec, as you call it. They need that, throttle. It's going to have to be a hub-based system. The disadvantages of the hub-based system, all your weight is on one end of the bike, especially if your battery's also on that end of the bike. And they wear out much quicker than, big metal gears in the middle of a motor. A lot of times, sometimes they're metal, but a lot of times they're just nylon gears, and those will wear out after time. And you'll get basically where you go to pedal and it just spins and it's not catching anything. And what I'm seeing now that the mid-drive that we talked about, the price is coming down, more and more shops like mine are not willing to take on the liability of those hub-based systems. So if I replaced a spoke on your friend's wheel, and I know that she's been riding it for a while, there's a chance that, you know, me taking on and off that freewheel to replace the spoke. So the freewheel is your gears on the rear hub of one of those. I may mess up something, or it wears out in 100 miles. You blame me, you know, and it's not my fault, but I was the last mechanic to touch it. So of course it's my fault.
Arlie, I am just noticed that Deborah's raised her hand, so I am going to unmute her and let her ask the question directly. Working on that though.
Okay. Hey, Arlie. So I guess great minds think a lot alike, because Richie asked a similar question. So he asked a question about safety for the young kids, where to put them on the bike. And mine was, can the kids ride the bike? Would you, for old, I saw some kids riding a golf cart, and they were pretty okay until they started showing off, because I was watching. So how about, what age would you say for the kids?
Yeah, so it sounds like two questions. So the first one, you know, I would say it depends on you and your family, on the actual kid, you know, containment and where they need to sit, and your location. You know, like if you are in downtown busy city, you may not want like an e-bike with a trailer. You know, you might want the most compact thing that you can get through the city nice and quickly. And if you're a parent, you understand this, but it really also has to do with your parenting and your kids. So I have a 2.5-year-old that I like to see him. So often I use a cargo bike that he's sitting in front of me, because if he's behind me, he's unbuckling himself, probably trying to like escape, you know? And so I just like to see him. My 5-year-old, I mean, she would be perfectly fine for probably 5 hours back there, you know, singing songs. So I would say that's where like a specialty cargo bike shop really comes in, that you can try different. But what I think is fun, and Heidi, I think you guys had that like cargo bike test. I forget what you called it, but it had a cute little name. But, you know, you guys, there's enough cargo bike owners in North Carolina that maybe when we can have a summit together, we can have like an e-bike and cargo bike group ride. And that way you can try different ones. You know, like in my shop, I had 15 different types of cargo bikes for you to try. And there was a lot of questions, you know, how are you going to store it? Where are you traveling? How many kids? Here in Colorado, it's sometimes very important that the kids are insulated because it gets cold. North Carolina, I'm a lot less worried about that. Maybe in Western North Carolina. And then for e-bikes for kids, it's actually coming. And I have very mixed feelings about this. So we're moving there because my wife is a pediatric emergency room doctor, and she'll be working at Duke. Sorry, UNC fans. And we debated this, you know, because I can picture my 5-year-old when she's 12 or 14 having the mental capacity, right? Like you and your golf cart analogy. My 2.5-year-old, he could probably be riding a bike with pedals right now, but I'm keeping them off because he is like Evel Knievel. So I think I think as our country adapts to the idea of like transportation, we're going to need, hopefully, we can put restrictors on e-bikes, Deborah. So like some of my cargo bikes that are 3 wheels, I make it so you can't go above 10 miles per hour with the assistance, so you don't tip it over.
Yeah.
And we could do the same thing for kids' e-bikes, where it only assists them up to a certain level, where like, you know, they no longer can register what's happening in front of them to make those choices. And I think of my daughter, like she has to ride her car on the cargo bike some places because it's just too far. But, you know, if she had some electric assist, but then we talk about the bike weight and like, is it safe for her to ride? But in Europe, I mean, they start at like 10. So, and something interesting actually that you brought up, there are electric bikes that can fit a wide range of people. And I have several customers that have purchased it for their high schoolers so that they don't have to get their high schooler a car to get to school. Or my favorite is when they buy a cargo bike and it's the 14-year-old's job to bike the other kids around. And that's what they do, you know, and it's just how they get around. And she's doing it at a younger age because she doesn't have a license, obviously. But she's physically capable and, you know, she takes them all over. It's a lot of fun to watch.
Mhm. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, Arlie, I'm going to tag Ted's question regards, I think it kind of relates to the cargo bikes. And he asked, children and bikes, would they be subject to North Carolina state rules for children on bikes, their weight, height, helmets, all those kind of nuances?
I'm trying to find his question. I don't see it. So here in North
He sent it to me
Carolina
privately.
Okay, so here in Colorado, kids under 16 have to wear a helmet. They're not allowed on a class 3 bike. You have to be 16 to ride one of those. And then, you know, I forget what state or city, there are restrictions where, you know, how you carry your child, like they have to be constrained instead of just dropped in. And I know in those instances, people just added seatbelts to the bikes. So they're on like a 5-point harness and meeting those.
But there's no
Did that answer your?
in the laws for putting your child on the back of an e-bike versus putting your child on the back of a regular bike.
Here in North Carolina, or not North Carolina, Colorado, we, it's really just helmets and then that class 3. So class 1, as long as they have helmets on, they're fine.
Okay.
Hi, this is Ted. I think the question that I'm posing, North Carolina does have weight and height restrictions for a child on a bike. The 16-year-old helmet is whether you are or aren't, but there are North Carolina right now for a bicycle has a height and weight requirement as part of the law on when they can be on a bicycle. My question wasn't based on any separation between an e-bike and a regular bike. My question was putting them in a cargo bike or putting them on an e-bike, you still, I think, would have to be cognizant of that regulation until some changes are made in some other capacity. Similar, I guess, to people being on the back of a truck and riding around. The liability issue, remembering that unfortunately North Carolina, as opposed to Colorado, has a different negligence theory for liability.
Yeah, I don't think Anne's on here. I used to work with Anne at Bike
I
Law.
happen to be a lawyer, that's why.
Yeah. I used to work with Anne at Bike Law. So I would look at what you'll know this more than I would, but what requirements are needed, you know, from that aspect. Are there any things listed, or does it just say, you know, once a second passenger reaches a certain height, they must ride their own bike?
So Arlie, I think maybe the question is, you know how you see people with bucket bikes and they're often carrying an infant in a baby seat. Is that what you're asking, Ted? Is that allowed on a?
Well, I'm just posing the question.
Okay.
You must be cognizant of those laws. Just because it's an e-bike and you can pedal it easier or something doesn't take away the requirements for what you can do on a bicycle with a child. That was there's no exception. Whatever the rule is would be followed. It's 45 inches or 45 pounds is the basic statute. And so I was just pointing out that e-bikes aren't an exception for that, since they are defined as a bicycle, at least, you know, and whatever changes are made.
I would what I'll do is, one, I'll look it up, but two, I'm happy to reach out to you if, I think you were just kind of trying to point out what the restrictions might be for riding
Yeah.
a cargo bike in North Carolina.
Or
Yeah,
a regular
I'm,
bike.
so any bike.
Any bike, e-bike or regular bike. I think because right now, until North Carolina changes it to classes, which will incorporate some different changes, the bike, an electric bike is defined as a bicycle, and therefore would be subject to those same requirements of weight and height for a child to be on it, regardless of e-bike or regular.
Does a tandem fall in that category?
I'm not yeah, I think a tandem might still fall under that same definition of weight and height requirements for how to treat a child on a bicycle.
Interesting.
It's a safety
You're right.
issue.
We had talked about that a little bit with the e-scooters, and someone had bought up the e-bikes were coming and the cargo bikes. So I don't know what we decided, but people were pulling up our articles on that.
Okay, well, I hate to change the subject, but I'd like to get one more question. I have one in from Claudia, and she asks, when you ride in the mountains, it's also makes it more difficult to control the bike when
Yeah.
you get on and off the bike due to the weight being so high or so heavy.
Mhm.
There really isn't a question there, but I guess it's kind
No,
of like,
totally. No, so
That
one
was
of,
in relation to having the wheel with the motor.
yeah.
And then you,
So, one of the things that has always concerned me, and you guys will probably understand, like there's a lot of people that look at electric bikes that it's going to be able to like bring them back to their youth, and now they have, especially if they're not sure on the price, they might order one online and it's 65 pounds. And all of that weight, especially on the direct to consumer ones, the weight's very high, the wheels are very big. And now you're trying to move a 65-pound bike that has a very top heavy feel. So it's not only 65 pounds, but all the weight, like when you turn, all the weight's on the top, kind of swinging around. I think there's more and more brands that are working on smaller wheels, bringing the weight down, moving the battery as low as possible. But it's something that, when you go, especially, I think the Pedigo brand has its place for sure. But when you go to test ride that, be ready for that initial, I tell people, have your seat a little bit lower for this initial test ride so you can touch comfortably on both sides. This isn't where we're going to leave it, but you have electric assist, so I'm not so worried about your knees. But I've seen enough, typically baby boomers that are trying to continue to ride the way they've been riding, or they want to be able to have this new hobby, and they think an e-bike's going to solve it, and they just hop on like it's a normal bike, or they order this bike and it arrives and their, daughter or son builds it for them, and they take off from their driveway and they crash. And so I think that's where, like Claudia's point, especially if the terrain's varied or you're going up and down hill, can you physically pick up a 65-pound bike if it's fallen over, or if you need to control it in a, technical space, or, especially even just driveways, when they're steep and you're leaning over.
well, you actually lead us right into probably our last question, and it's from Richie. And he says that he asks, can you break down bike types by ease and safety? And he also is curious, is your shop, did your shop keep bikes in stock, or did you drop ship them through the sellers?
So I guess those two questions.
There were two questions.
So Richie, were you specifically asking about different types of cargo bikes or just e-bikes?
Yeah, that question, you kind of answered it earlier because it was related to whether there's a type of cargo bike that's better for kids riding safely. And you're totally right that it's kid by kid. And I know that now.
Yeah, so cargo bikes, they're typically into two sections, right? You have a box in the front, which is called a front loader or a box bike, or you have the rear, and those come in different lengths. The shorter one called a midtail. And the benefits of those are they ride like a normal bike. The downfalls of those are your cargo, whatever it might be, is behind you and it's high. Versus a box bike, all of your goods are down between the two wheels. So for example, my 80-pound golden retriever gets in the front of my box bike and I can ride one-handed fine because it's nice and stable. The bike is ridiculously long, but all the weight is down between my wheels. When I put somebody on the back of a mid or long tail, their weight's up high. They're sitting on top of the wheel and they're high, even if it's a 20-inch wheel. And so when they lean, I feel it. Saying that though, it's the easiest to hop onto, to share. There's definitely a learning curve of that first test ride for a front loading cargo bike. And then I say, figure out what you are excited about riding. Like I'm totally down with riding a box bike with nothing in it because we all drive cars with nothing in it. But some people feel silly. They're like, I'm riding this gigantic cargo bike around and I have nothing in it. But in midtail or one of the rear loading cargo bikes, looks like a bike, just a little bit longer. And then about drop shipping. So the way I worked, which is very probably strange in the bike world, every bike on my floor for the most part was a demo bike. So 15 to 20 electric cargo bikes to try out. And then unless it was a really popular model or inventory at my brands were running low, typically I order the bike for you. And the reason for that are colors, accessories, motor options. I try to predict what customers want, but Claudia knows that's like impossible. The good thing about cargo bikes, they don't come in small, medium, large. So I can just have one of each. I would say like the biggest thing for me of having a dedicated cargo shop, just like if you go to a dedicated road or mountain bike shop, I'm really good at that one niche. So I can build it, I can service it. I know the nuances of each of those models very intimately. And that's when I struggle, a shop that maybe doesn't have a lot of experience, or maybe this is the first time they're seeing an e-bike. I've had shops where, so I'm in Denver, but I sell to the mountain regions. So basically from Montana to Missouri to Texas. And I've had shops call me like, hey, I have a customer that drove from Denver and now I'm their bike shop. How do I get this thing into my stand? And so I would say I really shy away from, especially e-bikes, but definitely cargo bikes. Like especially if you're putting kids in it, like buy that local, even if it's not the exact brand you want, sacrifice that for having a shop that knows the bike that you're riding.
That was great. We are at 7 o'clock, so I'm gonna let you go drink more coffee, although I can't imagine doing that. I'm
gonna be like tweeting Heidi at like 2 in the morning tonight.
I'll be tweeting you back. Let's see, will that be 4 or 5?
Yes.
But thank you so much. This has been great. It does make me want to go out and get a cargo bike. Unlike Steve, I still have a little room in my garage. So thank you. And thank you everybody for joining us. Hope to see you in the morning.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Arlie. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night, and we'll see you at 8 o'clock for our keynote.
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock.
Right.
Right, yeah, thank you.
Okay.
9 o'clock for our keynote. Thanks, Arlie.
Thank you, Arlie.
Yep. Can't wait to see you back in North Carolina.
Bye, Arlie. See you, Terry.
See ya. Have a great night. Thanks for being here.